Good morning. It's Lisa Prysock, and I am recording Tina Book Tuesday, episode 10. I'm here in my writing office in Kentucky, and I hope you have a second or a few minutes to chat with me this morning. I've got a cup of tea. I'm drinking a blueberry pomegranate tea this morning, and a bottled water. And I hope you have something to drink that you enjoy. And today I wanted to share a little bit with you about my childhood and where I grew up. Um, so I grew up basically in the heartlands. I grew up in two different states because my parents were divorced. So my early childhood, I lived in Minnesota. I was born in Hastings, Minnesota, and that's near the St. Paul Park area. And then we moved to the Apple River area in Wisconsin near Stillwater. And I remember going to kindergarten there. And then right around the middle of my second grade year, we moved to northern Minnesota near Nisswa. And I remember going to second grade there. It may be part of first grade. It's a little hazy for me because it was a long time ago. And then, and I should mention that during that time, both when we lived in Wisconsin and Minnesota, we lived in very rural areas growing up. And when I say we, I had two younger sisters. So the area in Minnesota and Wisconsin, it was like being on a farm. And, I could go outside and play, and we had animals around a lot, especially when we lived in northern Minnesota. I remember we did a lot of, it wasn't really a working farm, but I remember my parents and grandparents did do a lot of gardening, and a lot of hunting and fishing, and those things added to our food that we ate. So I did gain a natural love for gardening during those years and just being outdoors. I can remember taking walks outside in the country and the trees and going fishing and camping and the lakes, and it was a very beautiful area to grow up in. But by the time I was about 9 years old, my parents split apart and we moved to Ohio. And there I grew up in the Massillon, Canton area. And I remember that my mom had to go to work. And it was sort of like taking the country girl out of the country and putting her in the city. So it was a big change to adjust to. Because we became latchkey kids and we weren't really able to get outside as much. I remember my mom would take us to the park on the weekends, but it wasn't quite the same. I did enjoy the aspect of being near lots of shops and having schools that had better funding. I enjoyed those things. Because we had newer school books and teachers were probably a little bit more equipped. But I missed being able to go outside and have a bike and go where I wanted to after school. A lot of responsibility was put on me at a young age during that time. And the one thing that I really enjoyed was the fact that we were near my maternal grandparents at that point, and they were ministers and had a church in Maslin, an Assemblies of God church. And I remember my grandfather had gone to the bank to get a loan to build that church um, like 13 times. 12 times the bank had turned them down. But the 13th time they said yes. And my grandfather believed that because of his um, faith, the Lord rewarded him with 13 years at that church. And that really became my home church growing up. And their ministry really impacted me greatly. And it was exciting to be a part of that. And so I grew up under their ministry and being a part of it. And then that just impacted me so much. I was introduced really, although I remember going to churches in Minnesota a lot, of course. We went to both small country churches and a larger church when I was growing up. But moving to Ohio, now I was able to see firsthand more of my heritage and get to know my grandparents more. And they just instilled so much in me of the word and what it was to have a relationship with Jesus. So this impacted me greatly. And of course, my mother did too. She would read the Bible to us, and she was a great student of the Word. So I was just surrounded by all this, but I did miss my father during that time. And that was really hard on me, and it was hard to take on the level of responsibility that I had at a very young age. And so I grew up to be a very serious child. But one of the really amazing things that came out of all this hardship and loss was I developed a um, a creativity and a thirst for reading, because that I could do in unlimited quantities. And so there was this creativity that came out of me, and I just read a lot of books. I drew a lot of pictures. An artist came out of me, as well as a writer. And all of that was just really developing within me as a young girl. So I don't know what situation you're in, but I would encourage you that if you're, going through a tough time, to remember that all things work together for good to those who love Christ Jesus and are called according to his purpose. And I feel so thankful that he brought so much good out of these things for me. And if my childhood had been any different, I might not have known the power of God that I came to know. I don't think I would have developed as close a relationship with him. And I just think that I wouldn't have as much creativity in me and as much love for books and reading that I do. So the Lord knows what he's doing, and sometimes he puts us in situations that might not be exactly what we would choose for ourselves. But I really feel like I had a taste of the best of both worlds growing up. And now I do live in a subdivision, but it's in a rural community. And so we're close to malls and shopping, but we're also a little ways out in the countryside. So I feel like I have the best of both worlds, and I'm able to have a garden, and my writing office faces a wooded area, which has been inspiration for me. So this is something that has definitely been unique for me growing up. But I knew I wasn't alone. I knew there were others going through similar things in their childhood. but it did give me a unique perspective and really got me out of my shell and gave me creativity because I had so much time on my hands where I couldn't go outside and play, but I could read books and I could draw and I could develop that gifting within me. So, again, the Lord, He really knows what He's doing when He puts us in situations and circumstances that are beyond our control. So, and it's been nice to be reunited with my dad over the years. And um, I just thank God for what He's doing in my life now with um, helping me to be an author and sharing my experiences and some of these things in little pieces of me that you'll find in all of my books. And I hope you enjoy that. And I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about my background. And so I just wanted to also mention one thing. I do have a release coming out this week. And stay tuned for more information about that in the week ahead. And I hope you have a great week and a blessed week. And thanks for staying in touch.